Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the TRU Friday Community Gathering. This is October 2nd. Time just flies when you're having so much fun in isolation and doing all this new stuff on Zoom. It zooms by, I suppose you'd say. Today we're actually going to be talking about something that I cutely call Read All About It, um, which is basically a way of bringing in conversations from people that are engaged in online entertainment magazines or e-zines. A lot of you know Sandi Durell from Theater Pizzazz and Marcina
Zaccaria.
Zaccaria, who also works with Sandi, and Adam Feldman from Time Out New York, um, which is pronounced with the full spelling, Time Out New York. So, private joke. We've been covering a lot of area. It's challenging doing this every week. It may surprise you to know that, but I've managed to put together speakers and subjects for this is I think our 27th consecutive week. I'm always looking to bring in something new, something that we haven't discussed before, and I thought that the what our online magazines, what our entertainment coverage is now that we're in COVID must be changing. It must be challenging for Sandi and Adam and Marcina to figure out how to find the content, its new content, who's doing what, how to cover what's happening in COVID. I hardly know how to start with this, but Sandi, let's talk to you first. By the way, everybody, if your upper right-hand corner says gallery view, you're not in gallery view. If it says speaker view, you're in gallery view. So I would ask everybody to be in gallery view so you can see all of the participants. Okay, that's what I wanted. I wanted to actually see my three guests. So Sandi, I'm going to start with you. Tell us what Theater Pizzazz is. Tell us how you started it, and tell us how you've adjusted the business model now that we're in COVID.
Yeah, well, that's a lot. That's a lot to say. How many hours do you have? Basically, I created Theater Pizzazz it's a little over 8 years now, and it was really running strong. I had a wonderful bunch of writers. Marcina came on immediately as an administrative assistant, and she's like a right arm, taking care of all the things that needed to be done, because we were so busy reviewing theater, cabaret, going to interviews for new shows coming aboard. And and then came February, and things changed dramatically for everyone. So now my thought process went to, okay, how do I stay visible? How do I stay alive? And I thought about a variety of different things. Actually, the first thing that came to mind is to give some visibility to many of the performers and to uplift the fans and the people who are the readership at Theater Pizzazz. So I just went out and asked a bunch of Broadway people, cabaret people, can you make a video of yourself singing? You know, just do it at home, do it on your cell phone, nothing fancy. And I was amazed at the responses. You know, anybody from Jen Gambatese, and Annalise Scapacci, you know, who are just, I had just interviewed them. You know, they were getting ready to open in Mrs. Doubtfire, to Christine Andreas and Jelani Remy and Eddie Korbich and Amanda Green, and the list goes on and on. Joanna Gleason, they all responded. They all were wonderful. They sent videos. And this went on for months, actually, the first few months, as a new effort to give them, you know, their visibility, doing what it is that they do. And then I had, let's see, I have a writer well, a lot of my writers, this is an interesting thing. A lot of my writers, and there were 10 to 12 of them, many of them just kind of faded into, I don't know, maybe they were not feeling that they wanted to write anymore, just based upon the fact that there wasn't anything happening that they could write about. But then there was a handful of people who I found were just amazing. And they kind of like rose to the occasion, which was the most wonderful thing to see. It's like, I'm not going to let this get me. I'm going to find a way to just keep doing what I do, practice my craft in any way that I can. And that included, people like Samuel Leiter, who is a professor of theater and has written 5 books. And so he started a series called Leiter Looks Back, which was based upon the different 5 books, history of theater, dating back to the 1920s and the 1930s. And it went on for several months. And
let me ask you something.
Go ahead.
Can you just briefly say what Theater Pizzazz was and before then and what it is now? How has it changed? Okay. I mean, we're describing as a complete overhaul.
Yeah. Theater Pizzazz was an entertainment website covering theater, cabaret, doing interviews and reviews and posting news on upcoming shows and events. Basically, it's the same thing, except it's all virtual, which is just the amazing thing about it. The change is that now the writers are seeing theater that happened and it's now being refurbished in a way that they're revisiting and they're writing reviews. And there are so many virtual events going on. I mean, just based upon what I was hearing here today, you've got people who are writing new plays. They're doing readings. Some of them are doing, full performances virtually. And that's why Theater Pizzazz continues to do what it is that we do, because there's stuff going on all the time. And the benefits, of course, and I'm talking about fundraising, raising money.
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
You said something about people are repurposing. Are you talking about productions that people are streaming of live performances that they've recorded? Because we haven't talked about that a lot here. We've been talking about creating pieces for Zoom and for isolated presentation.
Yeah, so you've got Broadway HD that, of course, has. It's good that they're around and they have the rights and the ability to be able to show many of our great productions, musicals mostly, from the past years. It's not. Some of the things are free, but it's a pay platform. And people can take a subscription and revisit anything from South Pacific to whatever it is that they loved in the past. And
so I want to bring Adam on. I'm gonna come back to Marcina, but I just want to ask Adam to come on for a second. And can you tell me what the change has been for Time Out? Is it similar to what Sandi's describing, or has it been a little bit different for you?
No, it's been an enormous change, of course. Time Out, as many of you may know, is a magazine, was a print magazine, has been around for 50 years in London, 25 years in New York. I have been on staff there since 2003, so I have been there for a while. I'm currently the theater, National Theater Editor and Dance editor for Time Out North America. We had already been trending in a virtual direction for some years before this, but this, of course, has vastly accelerated that process. Most of my job prior to this, well, part of it involved creating listings already for things that were happening in the city, but also I was going out and I was reviewing shows and editing the reviews of other people that I assigned to review shows. And I'm the president of the New York Drama Critics Circle. It was a very important part of my life for the past 20 years or so. That all came to an end, of course, in March rather abruptly. So I can tell you that what I did was I turned fairly quickly into doing virtual listings. At that time, there were very few people who were writing about the various virtual offerings that were happening. And we can go into the different kinds of those offerings later if you're interested. There are different sort of taxonomies involved. But I created a daily page, which I still, well, it's evolved a bit, but for the first 3 months or so of the pandemic, I was doing a daily page every day with what I thought were the best online theater or theater adjacent options for people to watch from home.
When you say theater adjacent options, again, let's be specific, because I've got a room full of people who are.
All right. Well, I'll be very specific.
Yeah.
None of this is theater because none of it is live and with an audience.
Okay.
So on a technical level,
theater adjacent.
It's theater adjacent, and it's theater adjacent in different ways. So I would say if we want to set up a general taxonomy, there are two main types which have subdivisions within them. So on the one hand, you have recordings of live theater performances. So these are performances that were live at one point, and we now have a record of them. So they're theater in that way. You've got a show that was at the Metropolitan Opera or was at the National Theater or was at here, and we have a recording of some kind of that. And that is now being shared, an archival recording of what was at one point a live theatrical performance. On the other hand, you have shows that are happening live or on a recorded basis that are created during this time, that are streamed out, and that can reproduce the theatrical aspect either by its liveness or because they are performing what are traditionally theatrical texts. So they're doing Shakespeare or they're doing plays or what have you. They're doing original pieces, but they're doing them live or they're doing them in a theatrical way. You wouldn't confuse it necessarily with television or film for that reason. So within these different two main categories, you have a lot of subdivisions. So within the first category, for example, you have things that are on a very high level that you find on Broadway HD or that you find streaming from the Met or from NT Live. And these are shows that were not only very high level shows to begin with, Broadway or West End or Metropolitan Opera shows, but also ones that were recorded with specifically with this goal in mind, that were recorded professionally, often with 10 or 15 different cameras that were edited professionally, and that in many cases were originally intended to be streamed live to cinemas throughout the world. So these are very high quality, very watchable recordings. And then you have a different layer of offerings, which is essentially archival recordings. And these are theaters that had recorded shows that were there, but mainly for reference and archival purposes, and have been sharing those things with the world during this period, either out of generosity or in a hope to raise money for their own companies. But these shows are generally, for various reasons, harder to watch online because they were not recorded for this purpose. The sound and the visuals are less engaging, they're less professionally rendered, and of course a lot of the performances themselves are on a different level of professionalism than the ones that you get from National Theatre or the Met. So, navigating these systems as a viewer can be challenging, and I hope that I help provide some guidance to that.
In your writing, when
I write them up, and I try to steer people towards the ones that I think will be of greatest interest.
So, Marcina and Sandi, both of you, given that now we've broken it down, because when you started talking about presenting or reviewing and looking at archival or previously recorded performances, I got thrown because I'm so used to talking about the isolated, what I call isolated performance, the people in frames. So we're not. Do you also cover people in frames? We should actually call it something like that. Actors in frames.
We don't necessarily cover people in frames, but I do try and list as many Zoom events, upcoming readings as possible. Actually, Marcina had an interesting opportunity the other day. She went out to Astor Place.
Let's have Marcina tell us.
Yes, Marcina, I want you to talk about correspondences.
Yes, thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much. I had the opportunity to see correspondences in Astor Place, and it was just last night, actually. And it's kind of a performance installation, to tell you the truth. And it's somewhere between, it's really, really performance. And the company that's presenting it along with Here, which used to be Here Arts Center, is a dance company. So it is exactly people in containers in Astor Place, and it's for the next 4 or 5 days. And then they have a conversation series afterwards. So that's an interesting form that, that people can look at outdoors. And since all the indoor spaces are shut, I don't know if the cabarets are opening, and I would love to hear more about that. But since the indoor spaces are shut, people are forced to go outside. And, you know, would there be Shakespeare in the park, Moliere in the park? And what I do know for certain is that this performance installation was very successful.
Yeah,
Well, I can tell you that I just wrote something about this yesterday, actually, in regard to the piano bars. They do not have authorization yet to have ticketed shows indoors, and so I don't think we're going to be seeing that anytime soon. But what people are doing in some places is replicating a piano bar experience by having entertainers on or near the street in audible distance of the patrons. So you've got that at Don't Tell Mama, you've got that at the West Bank Cafe, you've got that at Brandy's. That's as close as we're going to get for the next little bit. But as you mentioned, there are definitely some companies and some individual performers who are mounting outdoor live theater experiences, sometimes using earpieces, sometimes in parks with distancing. They've been sort of, the problem is that as that has been ramping up, we're also going to be seeing a change of weather that will make that more logistically difficult. So a lot of these things, the timing is very tricky. Similarly, in a way, as online theater begins to sort of sink in, and as people start figuring out ways to move their online productions beyond the confines of simple Zoom box organization. And a lot of them have been. People have been very innovative. People have been very creative with backgrounds and other technologies, especially younger and companies that are more tech savvy. But as this is happening, we're seeing a concomitant decline in, I think, the general interest in virtual theater, because for a while it was all that was available and people were stuck indoors. And for the first few months, at least, there was a great deal of interest in this kind of work. And that has seen a quite sharp decline in the past few months as other options for living in public space have become available. So weirdly, as this kind of theater is in some ways getting better, the audience for it is shrinking.
I think that there is people are getting weary, because being on Zoom for any length of time really is very tiring. And if it's something that you do very often, even though you crave seeing anything that is theater or cabaret, it begins to wane. And I know what Adam is talking about, because that is true in terms of what is going on. And it's nice that there's still the efforts and the creativity being made, but I'm not quite sure where this is going to go, because most things have to stream in order for it to be the quality and that people really want to see. And that becomes a difficult.
This may be a little discouraging for this group because we have a room full of people that are basically doing the best they can to find ways of being creative during COVID.
Right.
And
they should continue to do so. But the realities are the realities. It's more and more difficult. People are tired of watching this kind of theater. For a while, they were excited, and when there seemed to be some kind of end in sight, people just thought, let's all band together, and there was a group enthusiasm about it. As the finish line gets farther and farther away and less defined, I think it's harder to sustain that kind of energy, and we're still going to see large audiences for certain kind of event theater online. So, you know, whatever the Tonys do, for example, will have a built-in audience. But it's harder for individual artists to make that kind of a dent unless what they're doing is really interesting or sort of new and or has some great sort of gimmick about it.
So Marcina, have you seen any online isolated performances that you've enjoyed, or are you really exclusively looking at previously performed, recorded, slick theater?
Well,
Where are you?
I did see something online that I thought was interesting, and it was someone appearing in a cabaret space, and then, you know, they utilized the camera and they performed on a stage through the camera, and then I was able to receive that, you know, and see it on the screen. I felt on the fence about it, to tell you the truth, Bob. I didn't love that feeling of being in the room with what I saw. And I sort of preferred what I saw on Broadway HD, to tell you the truth. I looked at sort of one of these old MGM movies, and I was more impressed by that than what I was seeing on the screen. I also caught a Zoom reading that was sponsored by Columbia University, where I got my MFA. And I feel like it was a very successful reading, as are many successful readings, but it's a different feeling than being in the theater. So that's been my feeling about it, Bob.
We've talked about this every week. This 7 weeks of discussion. We all know that we can't recreate the live experience through Zoom. What I've been doing, and I will continue to do in spite of what you're saying, I'm going to continue to encourage people to find ways to creatively use virtual presentation. We've talked about live streaming, and live streaming is individual frames and very little control over what happens. But we also have talked about pre-recording and post-production and editing things. And there are things that have been very creatively and nicely and professionally edited that have been, I think, worthwhile Zoom or virtual or StreamYard or whatever the platform is, presentations. And they all, people are getting audiences. They're not getting thousands of people, but they're getting 50, 100, 150. I have 50 to 75 every week here in this room. I want to be a little bit more positive. Call me crazy.
No, I think you should be positive, because you know, as I think about it, and the fact that there are rooms that are opening, maybe only to 25% of people, but the creative force is so great that I can only imagine that some of the people who are actually in this room right now will take the opportunity and find a way to find a space where they can also take 2 or 3 of their actors and perhaps arrange a performance live in a real space. And that's not impossible to do. So, you know, if you can think about it and really go for it, I think it's quite possible, because
it's certainly possible. And I didn't mean to sound discouraging before. I'm being straightforward about what the landscape is. There are different kinds of virtual theater. I've seen a lot of it over the past 6 months. Again, for the first 3 weeks, I was doing this every day. And by every day, I mean this list literally took 14 or 15 hours every day, 7 days a week for 3 months. I have eased it down now as the landscape has changed. And now it's sort of, it's gathered into a weekly list, which still has an enormous amount of content and is replaced every week. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot for people to see. A lot of it is very good. It's especially good, though, when the people have a sense of what the medium is and what they can do with it. Because, again, simply sitting in a Zoom screen, a series of Zoom screens, is not going to hold the attention of audiences 6 months into this pandemic, into the shutdown. It's just not. Unless, well, it can, and I'll tell you when it can. It can when the actors are extremely good and working on a text that they know very well. So when you get these reunion readings that they've been doing sometimes of an off-Broadway production, and the cast has this sense of a shared identity, and they also have a deep investment and knowledge of the text, that can be exciting to watch. When they're just sitting around doing a table read that happens to be on Zoom, very hard to keep the energy up. So you have to think about that when you're putting this together. What is it that's going to sustain someone's interest for an hour and a half or longer? You know, how can you make it appealing and make it worth people's time?
You know, there are a couple of interesting things going on. Apropos of what you're saying, the York Theater is now has gotten the casts, all the casts together for Hallelujah Baby. And that's part of what they're going to be presenting, conversation with all of the original cast members. They're doing something interesting at Red Bull. This is kind of nice. Patrick Page, actually, I know you know about this, is doing what they call remarkable podversation. Clever. So Patrick Page is going to be in conversation discussing Othello and the Moor and his continuing Shakespearean roles. So that's another thing. I just got something from Keene Company. They're also, you know, doing some kind of a, what is it, getting together, doing, oh, this is free. After hours, special guests discuss their careers. So they've got Kate Baldwin coming up on October 5th. Then they have Marsha Mason on October 19th. So this is another form of entertainment. And instead of, you know, feeling that you're locked into, you know, little boxes of several people talking at one time, maybe this is another way to just feel good and get some theatrical stuff going and hearing, you know, about someone's wonderful career. It's, you know, there's a lot happening. It's just, it's different.
Yeah,
and
most of the theater companies do have those kinds of series. They're conversation series, and the Vineyard has VT, and the Classic Stage Company has Classic Conversations, and these are good ways to connect with the theater community and hear theater stories and lives from the theater, but they are not performances.
Well, let me give you a different point of view. Let me give you a context for this, because we've been talking about this like I said, it's like 28 weeks, and we have a community of people that are eager to have a way of finding a form of self-expression. What we do is we talk about the fact that since we can't do live theater, we want to use the medium, and Adam, you touched on this. We want to use the medium as the medium. Zoom is a medium. It's what we have. We don't necessarily have access to live theater performances, and we don't necessarily have a team of people that are going to help us do socially distanced productions. So we're really focusing on development now. We're looking at this as development, so it's a little out of your wheelhouse.
No, it's not that. I've been watching a lot of this over the past 7 months, so yeah. I've really seen quite a lot of it. There's a difference. First of all, I will say that the limitations are clear to this kind of theater, but there are also a lot of limitations that this kind of theater takes away. So, for example, if you can't afford an enormous set, you can have a virtual background that replicates, you know, anything that John Lee Beatty could come up with at the click of a finger. You can reach an audience across the country and around the world that you would never have been able to access in a small local space. So these are opportunities that virtual theater affords, and they're not insignificant. They are very real. You have the opportunity to get a much larger audience in some ways than you would be doing, you know, with one night in the solo festival. You can really, you know, if you play your cards right and you make something that's interesting, and you get the word out about it, and you publicize it right, which is very important in finding a virtual audience.
Well,
Then you can do a lot in this medium, and you can do a lot of things in this medium that you would never be able to do in real life. But you have to put planning and thought into it in advance. You can use Zoom backgrounds. They're not hard to master. They're really not. They're extremely easy, and anyone can do them. And you can alter with the touch of a finger. You can be wherever you want to be. And I'm doing it right now with, with 20 different things. And I can right now be in the middle of wherever I want to be. It's as easy as that. And people don't use it enough because they are thinking of themselves as stuck in this Zoom box. But they can be anywhere in the world with even the very, very simple Zoom technology. Forget about the much more complicated stuff that a lot of new theater companies are doing, which I encourage people to look into as well. Interactive theater, theater that uses the interactivity possibilities of the chat feature to guide what's happening. These can really change how your show operates and how engaging it is for an audience, but you have to think about it. Don't just sit there in front of your bedroom. Put on costumes, find a virtual background, make it visually interesting.
Well, I just went to the bar.
Cherry Orchard Festival, and it was amazing. It was game design in the background, and then there was one actress, and she was in a contained room and kind of reacting with the walls as there were projections behind her, and like sinking to the ground, and like going through all of these, sort of twists and turns. Meanwhile, they asked the audience to vote on whether she would be found innocent or guilty at the end of it. So it was very interactive, like what Adam was just saying. And it was also visually kind of really fascinating, but it was a game designer, had designed all the projection backgrounds. So it wasn't like classical theater in the background, but it was fascinating.
Do you guys have green screens, by the way? Sandi?
No, if you look on the bottom of your Zoom screens, you see where it says stop video. If you click on that arrow, you'll be able to see an option that says choose virtual background.
Well, that's what this is. That's what mine is.
Choose virtual background, and you can just choose any. You can upload any photograph from your own collection,
right?
And you can put it in the back. That's
the reason I'm bringing up green screen is because if you use a green screen, then the image is more stable. If you just put a virtual background without a green screen.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. There are many technologies that are better. I'm just saying on a very basic level, if you're afraid of these technologies or if you don't have access to them, you do have very easy access to these fairly simple ones, which you can use in creative ways, in which I've already seen people, it does a lot. Because people are at home, people are, there's already, theater is already, even in real life, a little static compared to film and television that people are used to in terms of, how much is going on visually on stage. And on Zoom, the challenges are greater in that regard if you just make it, just your actual background, your actual living room. You need to think about how you can use the tools at your disposal. And you need to think seriously about that. You need to direct it.
Absolutely. You have to know how to frame yourself, how to let yourself. There's whole sorts of things. We've actually had several Zoom gatherings about actors and how they have to adapt their techniques to the medium. It's also understanding that the medium is really a film medium. It's not a theater medium. So you have to find a way of adjusting what you would do on stage so that it actually works in front of a camera, because you are right in front of a camera. So we've talked about a lot of that. I actually wanted to ask you guys whether COVID presented any kind of struggle for your businesses. I wanted to actually focus on your problems, not on ours.
Well, of course it has, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you've adapted that. Now I know that you had them. You're not necessarily running the finances of Time Out.
No,
but
I'm not remotely running the finances of Time Out. But Time Out is a large multinational corporation, just publicly traded in the UK. It's way outside my field of control. But I will I will say, and it's not a secret, there have been huge cuts in the staffing and the general financing of the organization. We've lost a lot of people, a lot of very good people, not by anyone's choice, just the economic realities are the realities. We are a magazine that says what to do when you go out. People have not been able to go out for half a year. That means that our advertising, et cetera, is in real trouble. We also have been setting up food markets around the world, which was going very well for a while, but now again, not the best time to be opening a public food market. So yeah, it's a struggle all the time, and we all have to hope that things will come back, and but meanwhile, you all, if you are so inclined, can be supportive of media organizations that you want to be supportive of. Visit the sites. Click on them when you see articles linked to. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Unlike Adam, as an independent,
Yeah, you are involved in the finances.
I'm involved in everything. The buck stops here. Nothing goes by me. Editor, bottle washer, you name it, the whole thing. But yes, I mean, the advertising that I had coming in, a lot from cabaret artists, has been completely cut off because who's performing now? So it's a whole different situation here. I like to call what I do a labor of love at this point. And who knows, maybe one day it will result in something even greater, but I'm with it. I'm sticking to it. We have new content going up daily in as many arenas as possible. And thank goodness for my handful of writers that are still sticking with me and doing what they can. And it is what it is. I think what it is that mostly is that I find that one has to be much more creative than ever. Everything was set before this happened. I knew exactly what I was going to be doing. The press, stuff was coming in daily. I mean, it is now too. It's just different kinds of things. But, it's like, okay, go to this show, go to that show. And, either I was reviewing it or one of my writers was reviewing it. I'm a drama desk and an Out of Critic Circle voter. So, for me, it's always a matter of having to see everything so I can legitimately at least cast my votes when the time comes around. None of that exists anymore. We're all just flailing in the wind, trying to figure out, okay, what's going to happen next? and that's where it's at.
Marcina, how has your job changed at all since March 15th and the shutdown?
Well, it was so interesting because on the day of the shutdown, it was an entire avalanche of emails for, I think people who don't work in the industry don't understand this, which is why I want to explain it before I answer your question, Bob, it was an avalanche of emails of everything's closing, everything's closing, everything's closing. And it all happened over 3 hours. And it was shocking, right? It was just absolutely shocking. Meanwhile, I honored my, reservation, because part of what I used to do, Bob, was make reservations for all of the writers. So we had to cancel all the reservations. So that's been really a huge change. The other change is, we started posting singers a lot of the time, singing from the shower, singing from Josh Groban, singing from his shower, other people singing from their basement, from anywhere, and their balcony. And there was something exciting about it that was kind of really new, which was a type of reporting that I think has shifted about survival and humanity, which I found to be really different and really, of the now. And I remember in the first month and a half after the pandemic, we started talking to artistic directors too about what are they going to do? How are we going to go forward? Because we all knew that our job before was know that there are shows happening, cover the shows, write about the shows. Now we're doing more interviews, Bob, and we're talking to more artistic directors, and we're doing more Q&As. And I think it's exciting. I think it's terrific. And I think that, it's part of reporting arts and reporting for theater. And for us, I think that it's essential to continue doing this work. So for me, those have been the big changes. And those will be the places where we're going to continue forward.
Adam, you touched a little bit on how content has changed for you as well. You talked about how at the beginning you were doing daily posts. So what are your daily?
Well, I'm still doing daily posts. I'm trying to do more sort of longer posts about specific events or specific developments, and not a daily post on the virtual theater options. Although again, I put a link for my virtual page in the chat. I can put it again. I urge you all to go and visit it, not for the clicks, but because I think that you will get a sense of what is out there. I urge you also to watch some of these. Most of them are free, or many of them, and you'll get a sense of what works and what doesn't. I list as much as I can on that page, and it still is. It takes an enormous amount of work every week. It takes most of my time.
Most of what you're listing are finished performances, or
no? At this point, there was a period in the first few months where a lot of the stuff that was of main interest to people was this kind of very polished professional performance. Other than the Met, which still streams nightly operas, most of that content has kind of dried up. Andrew Lloyd Webber was doing it for a while, and the NT Live was doing it for a while. The Globe was doing it for a while. But most of them have shifted to a different model, because giving the stuff away, for one, was not bringing them any money, and two, was using up what was essentially a limited quantity of these recordings that they had. And although again, at first there was this feeling of, well, let's all band together and do this, that has changed. And so what we're seeing now from these same companies in many cases are efforts to do new programming of some kind, but paid programming. So the Met has a series of live concert events every 2 weeks that they're doing from around the world. Or the Old Vic has a program now calling In Camera, where they have actors on the actual Old Vic stage in London performing for an empty audience, but being broadcast live around the world for a paying virtual audience. So these are different models that people are starting to develop in the major theatrical companies. Many of them are still doing a different model, which is kind of a donation-based, we'll put this out for free and also ask you to give money, and that, we'll see where that goes. The Irish Rep has been pretty good about putting out serious productions.
They were our guests last week.
On a mostly paid basis. You can watch it for free if you can't afford to. They make that clear, but they have a suggested donation of $25 or more, and I suspect that most people who are watching it are making a donation of some kind. So there are a lot of different approaches, and if you visit the page, you'll see different pricing structures. You'll see different approaches to whether something is live only or whether it can be viewed for a prolonged period of time or an indefinite period of time. So everyone's kind of feeling out what works best for them in this regard. But nobody has an answer yet.
So
I think we will see more of the kind of theater where the actors are actually together performing live, but in a way that is filmed and streamed to a virtual audience.
Well, they're already doing that. I mean, Tom Pullum is one of the people I know who's doing that with musicalstreaming.com, I think it's called.
Right. There's been some of that, but mostly, to the extent that's happened, it's been kind of cabaret shows, as you were saying before.
No, he's actually done musicals. Basically, they have a studio. They can bring one actor in at a time.
Right. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about fully staged productions that are performed for an empty theater, but that that are streamed live, that are performed for a virtual audience. That's something that's relatively new. The Old Vic is doing it, and some others. There was a company over the summer in New Hampshire that was doing it because the whole company had been quarantined together anyway the whole time. So we've seen a little bit of that over the summer. We're going to see more of that going forward because people are starting to take seriously different ways in which they can present theatrical material for people at home. If you want to submit something to me yourself.
There you go. That's what the urgent question in the room.
Yeah, I saw that in the chat. If you scroll down to the very bottom of my page, after reading it all, you can just scroll down very quickly to the bottom of it. You'll see there's information there about how to submit materials. I would encourage you, if you are submitting, to be as thorough as you can about exactly what the links are, exactly when and where it will be, how long it will be up, and to include a photograph, ideally with a photographer credit, because without a photograph, it's very hard to put a listing together and catch anyone's attention.
So this would be for listings, and also Theater Pizzazz. Do you take listings? Can people list with you?
Yes.
And what are the criteria? What are the things you're looking for?
Well, I'm looking for any, if it's something new and something that is relevant. I think that anything is good to have and to let a theater going audience know about, and then they'll be the judges.
So you'll list actors in frames.
No. I shouldn't say no, because we have.
That's what they're trying to. Everybody's trying to find out.
That's really what's going on now. We've got, of course, okay, actors in frames. Yes, Zoom events, and we have. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff listed now. It's a daily happening because I keep getting things all the time, and certainly I want to be able to put out as much as possible, and I want to be able to help the people who are trying to get their work out. And give the audiences, something that they feel they want to be able to see. And it's, and by the way, just going back to what Adam was saying, there have been live performances at Barrington Stage. They had a whole summer practically of doing Godspell live in a tent. And they also did Harry Clark. I think they did 1 or 2 cabaret performances. There's something up in Norwalk, Connecticut called MTC Main Stage, and they have a live performance coming up on RFK, the last 4 years of his life. So don't give up the ship, folks, because there's, there are things happening live for as long as they're going to be able to happen. And these things are intense, so then they'll bring in heaters. In fact, up at MTC in Norwalk, they're serving food as well, so it's like going to dinner theater.
Yes, and for real life theater, the options are going to be adapting and changing as things go forward. I know that in Philadelphia, I think it's the Wilma, they're conceiving of a whole theatrical redesign where that would be specifically designed for social distancing in audiences that would have glass panels in a wider spaced out audience, so that they could accommodate larger audiences when and if that becomes possible and legal. Everything is changing very rapidly, and there are a lot of ways to go forward. But I would say yes, to answer a question that was in the chat. You can submit to me yourself. Absolutely. You do not need to have a press agent. My submission information is at the bottom of my page. I cannot guarantee that I'll be able to list you. There is a lot happening, and I am only one person. But I do try to list, what I can. And I will certainly, if you send me your information, I will certainly consider it.
So, Marcina, have you seen any of the Metropolitan Zoom presentations that Bernie Firstpan has been doing?
So you mean Bernie Firstpan, because there's also the Metropolitan Theater.
No, Metropolitan. Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm actually listing Metropolitan Theater right now. The Clod is the next thing they're doing. They're doing that.
You mean the Metropolitan Playhouse in the East?
Oh, Metropolitan Playhouse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they've been doing a series almost every Saturday night of readings of one acts from the 1910s. So very interesting material. Again, find a gimmick and stick with it.
Well, I was actually thinking more of the cabaret because I know Theater Pizzazz has one foot in the cabaret world. So
Yeah,
I was thinking.
let me tell you about that, what Bernie Frischpan is doing, because I've been on his Metropolitan Zoom, many times, and he really has a very fine platform that he has been able to orchestrate, and the performances have been fabulous, and it's, it's amazing. But I'm going to go one step further because I just announced this for him. He is opening up a broadcast studio. He's taken space in Long Island City, and just apropos of what you were talking about in terms of filming, he's got all the equipment coming in and big screens so that the performer or performers will actually be able to see themselves performing to an audience when they are in that studio. So a lot of interesting things coming along. Yeah, so keep an eye out.
Well, yeah, and on the cabaret front, Birdland is doing 2 shows a week live from its stage with 3 cameras in the actual Birdland performance space. So that's another approach similar to what we were talking about with theater, but for cabaret. So we're going to see that. And last month there was a series that was a live indoor concert series that they were sort of loopholing themselves around the regulations by doing it in what was usually a studio rehearsal space in Times Square, but that wasn't technically covered by the law. So there are different ways of doing that, and so people will continue to try to find ways, and I encourage you to do that within the bounds, always within the bounds of consideration for the safety of the performers and the audience.
Yeah, I've heard that only one technical person is allowed to be there. You can have one person who's photographing. That's what equity is limited in terms of doing any kind of. Well, it's not equity. I guess it's SAG-AFTRA in this case because it's being filmed. Marcina, you were going to say. Oh, and by the way, to the room, get ready to ask questions, please. We're happy to have your questions. Do a virtual hand raise, or if you need to, just come into the room and ask the question, whatever. Marcina, what you were going to say?
Something that we heard of similarly was they were performing in a wind tunnel or something, 47th, and one of the listings that they had sent. And it's this type of thing that I think that people can encounter in a socially distanced way. So the presenters who are putting up these pieces, I think they often have squares on the ground and are, letting audiences know in advance that socially distanced attendance is the best way to attend at this point for these special events.
So, my friends out there, do you have any questions at all? Would you like to?
I just want to clarify because I've been getting some private messages. Please don't message me your information here. I'm not gonna get it. Go to the bottom of my page, not to muckrack. Go to the bottom of the page on Timeout. The link that I put in the chat. There's a contact information there, and you can use that. And please do send me any information about your shows, and I will absolutely take a look at it.
So again, I'm opening up for questions from the room, and I also want everybody to know that as we've been doing every week, I will put you into breakout rooms so that you can meet each other on a more intimate basis, like 4 to 6 people per room. I'm hoping that my guests will stay. If they can't stay, it's fine, but it would be very exciting for people to be able to have a little conversation with some of you. So Edward Oscar, Osredkar. You trying to unmute yourself? Murray Davis, you can come on in.
Yes, I'm going to be a little mysterious as to not give too much information away, except to say I saw a play 3 times. It was on Zoom, but you'd never know it because, and the reason I don't want to give the information away is I'm going to, after this meeting, I'm connecting Bob with the people and they'll be here coming to speak.
On October 23rd.
October 23rd? Okay,
Yeah.
That was fast enough. What took so long?
No, wait. 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd. Yes, 23rd.
23, okay. Anyway, I watched a play where it took place in 3 different places. There were hotel rooms involved and everything else. As I said, I'm not going into the details of the name. Suffice it to say, it's live, number 1. Number 2, you never knew you were watching Zoom in boxes because It was as large as their rooms were. That's how large the setting was for each particular hotel room, apartment, etc. They are exceptional actors. They're young. They're in a master class. It's amazing to watch. But everything that was being said, if someone had seen that, I have seen how Zoom started in March. I just learned about it to see where it is today. And it takes a great director, tech, because one of the guys who's the actor is the tech person and the producer, et cetera, et cetera. But if you watch it, you'd never know you were watching little boxes, because it's not. As I said, it's as large as your room is. That's as large as it can be. And it was set in places. So I hope that you get, as I said, October 23rd, please come, because then you're going to see it in person.
And you put it into the chat so people can find
now
it.
I can give you the date, yes. But they're excellent. And if there's one like this, I'm sure there are many more. That's just the one that I experienced. And I'm starting to work with them because of it. Just fantastic. Amen.
Any other comments from the guys? You can actually turn. Who is that? Me? Because I have my email shut, so I don't know why. What?
Yeah, it's me. And I have tried many times, and many people have said, this is how you can shut off that ding every time an email comes in.
I keep shutting my email one window at a time. It's like,
I went to my settings and forget it. I'm just getting out of my email, because that's the only way that this is going to work.
Well, I'll be able to trim all this when I edit this, and then I'm going to actually say a thank you. So we've talked a lot about Michael. Did you have something that you wanted to say, Michael DiCatano? Okay, you're in the room now. Well, I want to thank Sandi. I want to thank Marcina, and I want to thank Adam for being with us today. It was somewhat of a difficult conversation for a lot of people, because we're all here trying to rah-rah ourselves into feeling adequate, at least, maybe not good, but at least adequate about presenting our work on Zoom. I still believe that it's possible. I still believe there's an audience. I've actually gotten emails from many theater goers, not theater people, people that are attached to TRU as being part of the community, audience members, who say that they love the Zoom experience because it's so intimate. And that's the thing you have to remember. You have to remember what it is we have, not what we don't have.
It's not just possible, it's happening. It's happening very well. In a lot of cases, it can be really engaging and exciting when it works well. Just, you have to put the time in to make sure that it works well in the medium you're using.
Yeah,
And
with this creativity, you will never stop the force. It will just keep on happening.
The force is with us.
It is.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much for being with us. And everybody, put your audio in, come into the room, and then I'm going to put you into breakout rooms so you can meet each other. And I hope that you'll come back next week. Next week, I have a conversation with Mara Isaacs, who is the producer of Hadestown, a very unlikely person to have made a commercial trip to Broadway, and she knows it herself. So you're going to find out how she did that, coming from a very non-commercial background. And we're also going to talk about how she made the detour into the virtual world. She's one of the producers of Theater for One. Adam, you know Theater for One, don't you?
I do. I wrote a piece on it.
Yeah. So Theater for One is now being done virtually, and Mara's going to talk a little bit about that next week. So that's it. I'm going to end my video when I edit this here.
All right. Well, Bob, thanks for having me. Sandi, Marcina, nice to see you.
Oh, good to see you, Adam. And thank you, Bob. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Marcina. This is a great experience.
Thank you, Sandi, and thank you, Adam, and thank you especially, Bob, for putting this together. I think that these Friday 4:30 chats are really important for theater people.